All right, programming languages are overrated. Learn how to use a debugger. Hot take, but in my opinion, this is the difference between a copy-paste gremlins and professionals. Being able to quickly pinpoint and diagnose problems, especially being able to debug multi-threaded programs, is like a superpower. For clarification, I often see beginners fall into this trap of agonizing over which language to learn. Of course, programming languages are important, but they are worth building. But are they worth building a personality around it at this early stage? What I'm proposing for beginners is take a half an hour away from your reading top 10 programming languages of 2023 and get familiar with your IDE's debugger. Okay. So there's definitely some problems here. My one problem I have right away is that printf debugging is a very valuable skill to have. Okay, learning how to set up your logs are a very important thing to have. Third, some of us may use NeoVim and find it a little difficult to always be using debuggers inside my IDE, okay? Why do you got to bring that up? Maybe I like to use something other than my IDE for debugging, okay? But real talk, obviously being good at a debugger is great. Don't sleep on printf debugging. I think a lot of people just sleep on it, and they set up this entire environment to do debugging, in which probably is better done with printf debugging. There's some problems that I just have to get a debugger out. I find that when I print something out and I get nothing, like I have no idea, and so then I print out a couple more items and I still have no idea. Usually, then it's like the sign. It's like the obvious sign that it's debugging time, right? Like, I can't make any reasonable sense out of it in that small amount of time. And so that's generally my rule of thumb, which is I don't need to set up all those things. I just simply have go. What do you mean by printf? Console.log, printf, format.printf, whatever you want to call it, right? Loggers, right? I really do like a good logging. One thing I've been using a lot lately, which I think has really helped, is that for some TypeScript tests I've been running, is that I override Jest's default reporter, and then I create a logger in which prints out to the standard out. So I can still run tests via Jest, but it doesn't completely mangle all the output and put these huge spaces in between every one. Instead, they give me a nice running. And then inside the debugger, something I've also been doing is I've been adding an indent and dedent functions. So that way I can actually indent it. So it's like I'm walking down the tree of me logging, so I can kind of see it happening. I've been working on kind of like a very technical and confusing program lately, where it's just really hard to debug, right? You have to go through a function a bunch of times before it's super useful. And sometimes you want to see all the things that happened before that function. And then there's just so much context to gather that I find it sometimes difficult to use a debugger, and that it's a lot easier to use something like cat and grep to like see what happened at each state. Really like it. I've been really enjoying it. And then I prefix each line with the type and all that. Standard out it's been great. You know, so I like this hot take. Like, I genuinely like this hot take of debugging is a skill onto itself. So is reading code. You know, I find that the more I work by myself on some projects, the weaker I am at reading code. And so now that I'm working on a group project again, it's like dusting off some old skills that I haven't touched in a while, and that takes more effort. Reading someone else's code is so hard sometimes, which is so silly because, I mean, at the end of the day, you're just reading code, but like to have their mentality in yours has always been it can always be a little bit difficult. And so I'd say reading code may be as much of a skill need as a debugger if you want to work with people. And being able to program and try to like maintain a team dynamic within the code base is really good, not putting your own personal flair on everything. Also, very good. I know formatting is a thing, but some people like, a good example of this is some people like to use classes. Some people like to just do all functions everywhere. But if you go into a code base and all they do is use functions everywhere, you should probably follow that style. But if someone uses classes everywhere, you should just follow that style. You know what I mean? Like just adopting the style, not just simply like the prettier config, but actually adopting the style is very, very difficult. And I find that to be the hardest thing, is trying to mirror. So that way I try to write code in such a way that the person who originally wrote it would have to go, did I write this or not? And that's hard also. That's like a whole different skill of the love of OOP is the root of all kinds of evil. I'm on your team. All sorts of evil has been brought upon us by by the love of OOP. I like this. Hey, learn to code. You should love a language. I don't care what this person says. Learn to love a language. Learning to love a language is going to give you a bunch of skills that you really need, right? You're going to learn a language deeply. There's a lot of techniques and stuff you need to understand. To be good at debugging, you also have to have some knowledge of the language itself. So learn to love a language, learn to be a good debugger, learn to read code, and learn to program in a way that's different from the way you program. There you go. The end. Enjoy it. Enjoy that. The name is don't forget to use a little bit of printf debugging also, okay? Only using a debugger is kind of crazy to me, okay? It's kind of a little bit crazy. A little crazy.